So this is the egg art experiment, okay? So chance to be a bit arty with this one. What you need is a raw egg, okay? So a raw egg, we're going to be using this for this particular experiment. You also need some things to do your art with. Now I'm going to make a suggestion initially of what I'd like you to use. I've got some soft wax crayons here, okay? Soft wax crayons. And I've got a selection of a few other things, such as nail varnish, a felt pen, another felt pen, and a pencil, okay? So what I want you to do is pick one of them, doesn't matter which one at first, just go for the nail varnish. And what I want you to do is paint on some little design, just a blob, whatever you like, onto the egg, okay? So let's get a bit. And anything you like, just somewhere. I'm just going to put a little blob. I won't be too creative today. Let's try a bit more. Okay, so we'll leave that with that one. I think I will now have a go with the crayon. So let's go for that one there. Okay, now remember we're using a raw egg, so don't push too hard as you'll make it a bit of a messy raw egg. So again, I'm not going to draw a particular picture, I'm just going to scribble a shape or a little blob on here. And some eggshells will show up the colours you use more than others. So don't worry too much about it. You can pick a colour that works better for you. I'm just going to do a bit of a blob on there. Okay. Let's see. Okay, what about that felt tip? Let's try this one. And another blob possibly. It's a bit easier, isn't it? Could have drawn a face for that one. Okay, so far we've got the nail varnish, the soft crayon and a felt tip pen. We could perhaps do a little bit of pencil. Let's see what happens with the pencil. Oops. And I don't want to put my finger or anything, so let's put the pencil mark there. Now this is an HB pencil, so it's quite hard. You might want to find a softer pencil perhaps, but again, I'm just going to do a little scribble on here. And HB pencils, by the way, are the ones that most people buy in shops and write with and draw with. But people who use lots of sketching, do lots of sketching with pencils, they'll have a whole range of pencils of different hardnesses. I personally like a 2B, that's nice and soft. Oh, so here we have 4 different things on here. So remember, we have the nail varnish here, we have the crayon there, we have the black felt tip pen there, and the pencil mark there, okay? Then what I want you to do is to take a small jug and put the egg carefully into the bottom of the jug, and then I'm going to turn it around so we can have a look so far at what's going on. And I'm going to pour some vinegar on, okay? Now I'm using clear vinegar. We can use ordinary brown vinegar, malt vinegar. The reason I'm using clear vinegar is because I want you to be able to see what's going on inside. But remember, ordinary brown vinegar will work just as well. So just pour some vinegar on and see what happens. Okay. So within literally a few seconds, you're going to see bubbles appearing on the eggshell as we have here. Bubbles will start appearing and floating up. But this is an experiment which takes a bit more time. So what I want you to do is leave it. Now it may take a day or two in total, but what I want you to do is every now and again, maybe every hour or 2 hours if you can, come back and have a look at what's going on. It's okay to take the egg out carefully and have a look, because you may need to turn it around to have a look, but have a look at what's going on. But remember, this can take a couple of days, you will have to leave it overnight therefore, but come back and have a look, okay? I'll leave it with you. So here we have the egg art experiment about an hour and a half later. Okay, let's have a look. Now this is interesting. Look what's floating here. I wonder what that could be. I wonder what that could be. We'll soon find out. Something's obviously come off. So if I can pick it up. I don't want to touch too much where the artwork has been. Now I'm not going to rub this because I just want to show you. You can see where my thumb is, but that's what came off. That's interesting, isn't it? Now if I remember correctly, that was one of the pens, wasn't it? That was one of the pens. So interestingly, that's come off. But look what stayed on so far. Now I think I'm right in remembering that that was the nail varnish. That's an easy one to remember. And I think that was the crayon. That was the pencil. Okay, so it looks like the ink didn't survive very well so far. But we're going to come back to this one. So here we are with our egg art experiment, 5 hours in. Let's just see what's going on. Again, I'm going to pick it up. You can just, before I do, hopefully you can see there's some sort of foam around the surface there. There's some coloration there. I think that was, we saw that earlier anyway. Let's just push it around a bit with my finger because I want to see where the colours are, if they're even still there. Let's see, it's floating upside down I think right now. Let's take it out. It's a bit slimy, so do be careful, remember, when you're taking these out. They're very slimy. Right, let's see what's left so far. This is interesting. Let's clear some of this off a bit. We've got this brown stuff on there. Let's get that out of the way. Interesting. So now let me hold it still. I can only see 2 things remaining now. 2. Now, remember, that was the nail varnish. And that was the crayon. Okay, so nail varnish and crayon. So we've lost, it seems, the pencil scribble, which would have been around here somewhere, if I remember rightly. And the ink from the pen was about there, where my thumb is moving, wasn't it? And I think we can probably see some of it here. Interesting the way it's actually held together though, isn't it? Very strange. Okay, so we're going to put it back and see what happens in a while. So here we are on egg art again, 1 day later. So it's the next morning in fact, and I've even changed my t-shirt especially. Now let's have a look what's happened. Hopefully you can see. First of all, notice the shell seems to have gone. Look, if I push, that's interesting. So if I give it a good prod, the egg's gone a bit sort of rubbery, but the shell's gone. But look what we've got left. Now, do you remember we started off with nail varnish, which is there. We then put on crayon, we scribbled it there, and then over here we had the ink pen, if I remember it was about there, and we had the pencil, which if I remember correctly was about there somewhere. Now they've completely gone, as you can see, totally gone. But we do seem to have left the other 2 bits. So we've got nail varnish and the crayon. Now I will point out a couple of things that you may have noticed happen. Sometimes what's left here does actually come away from the egg. You might actually come a day later and find they've lifted away occasionally. This can happen for a couple of reasons, which I'll explain in a minute. But if I actually try and move mine, maybe mine can detach as well. Let's give it a bit of a push with my thumb. There you go, look. So hopefully you might be able to see it on camera. I'll tip it over a little bit more and moving it so it does move a bit. There you go. And let's see if that one can dislodge a bit. Oh, that seems to be fairly well stuck actually now. Okay. No, well I won't bother with that one then. That seems to be fairly well stuck. But you can see that where we have the nail varnish and the crayon, the shell seems to have stayed in place. So what's going on? So what's going on? Well, rather interesting experiment, this one. Vinegar contains acid. Acetic acid is the acid in vinegar. And we'll get the same acid whether it's brown vinegar or clear vinegar. Remember, we use clear vinegar because I wanted you to see what was going on inside as you were monitoring it over time. The vinegar dissolves away the eggshell, okay, the hard part of the egg, which is mostly made of calcium carbonate. It dissolves it away in a chemical reaction. The two substances react together in a chemical reaction and they make gas. Do you remember when we were checking it over time? There was lots of bubbles forming, there was a foam around it on the surface. That was the gas that was being made. And do you remember I also mentioned, oh, I can feel it fizzing now and again? You could probably feel that yourself when you picked it out. You might have been able to feel a sort of a fizziness under your fingertips. That was the gas actually being made. Now the eggshell has been completely dissolved away. But how come it's still an egg shape? Well, what you see here, what this flexible bit, which I can squeeze, that is what we call the shell membrane. Now the shell membrane is actually lining the inside of the eggshell in a whole egg. And you probably have noticed this before but never realised what it was. If you've ever had a boiled egg for breakfast, say, and you break the shell, hit it with a spoon or whatever you use, you peel the eggshell off. I don't know if you've ever noticed, as you're peeling the eggshell off, sometimes you notice a thin skin, a sort of a whitish skin. That's the shell membrane. Of course here, it's intact, it hasn't broken at all, and the acid doesn't dissolve it. So that's why it stayed there. And the egg inside is still liquid. In fact, you might just be able to make out some of the colours. Difficult to see on this one, but I can, from where I'm looking, I can see a little bit of orange peeping out, where I can see the yolk in there moving around. But look where we've got those two substances. It seems that the acid does not dissolve away this particular nail varnish, and it doesn't dissolve away the wax crayon. So acid doesn't affect those. And of course, because we drew them onto the shell itself, what they've done is essentially protected the shell underneath with a layer. So the acid can't get to the shell underneath. And that's how come they've stayed there. But remember, sometimes we can move them. They come a bit detached, like that one seems to move a bit there as I'm showing you that. That's because sometimes the acid can actually get underneath and flow underneath and eat away underneath. If that happens for you, one thing you could do, if you're using an egg out of the same box, is maybe make a bigger mark on the egg. Maybe scribble it somewhat bigger than I've done here, make it bigger. So that's a clue for a variable straight away. Make a bigger mark and it's less likely to do that. Okay, so it's the acid which has dissolved away the eggshell that left those two particular substances intact, which have protected the shell. So what other things could we change to see what's going to happen? Well, straight away we could consider other things that we might put on the egg and see if they protect it. You know those four substances we've used now. How about thinking some other things that you can use to mark an eggshell or put on the eggshell? What about things like, for example, sticky tape, some sort of tape, rather than something we paint on or scribble on? What about that? I wonder what that would do. What about that nail varnish there was of a particular type and obviously a particular colour? I wonder if that makes a difference, if we've perhaps found a different make of nail varnish or different colours or both. Same with the crayon. I mean, I use brown crayon there. What about using different colours? What about, instead of using different colours, use different makes of crayon? So that's another thing you could try. What about the time it took? Well, this took one day. It probably happened in the early hours of the morning by the time it was all dissolved away, because when I came in and looked at this first thing in the morning, it was completely like this. So it would have happened probably overnight. Of course, I was in bed by then, but now the shell is completely gone. Occasionally, you're going to come back in the morning and find out that there is still a little bit of shell still there. You'll see it'll be a light patch here and there. All that means is you're going to need to leave it a bit longer. So time is an important factor here. But what affects that? Well, let me give you a few clues. How about where you leave this? This is quite a warm room where we've left this overnight. What about if you leave it somewhere even warmer? Maybe you can find an airing cupboard at home where there's a hot water system or something where it's actually even warmer in there. I wonder how quick that would affect things. What about a fridge? Put this in the fridge. I wonder how that would affect how quickly things happen. What about the size of the container? This particular container, the egg fits no problem in here. But what about if we used a much smaller container so there was hardly any vinegar surrounding it? I wonder what effect that would have had. By the way, if you do this experiment and a day later there is still some eggshell on it, one option you've got is replace the vinegar. But of course you've changed something there. Be aware you are actually getting rid of that vinegar and putting fresh vinegar in. But when you put fresh vinegar in, it's a bit more acidic than this one will be, because this has become less acidic because it's been dissolving away the eggshell. So that's less acid in that now, if you like, and less strong. So you could use fresh acid and see what that does. And I'm sure you can think of a few other things. Vinegar